Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, 1983's My Sinful Life. This is part of a double bill Picorama Big 2 Unit show from Vinegar Syndrome with Las Vegas Girls, but tonight we're just looking at My Sinful Life. There it is right there. And this is directed by Carlos Tobalina. And you can see the back here has pictures from both, but this is the movie that we are looking at tonight. And this is directed by Carlos Tobalina, 1983. I've reviewed a lot of his other films on this YouTube page so far that Vinegar Syndrome has introduced to me at this director, and there'll be more to come. I think this was about 15 bucks, something like that, and you get available on a variety of different sites. This is My Sinful Life. It says as the tagline, "Schoolgirls by day, super ladies of the night." Now it stars the mysterious one-named star Danielle, who was actually on the poster of this right there, the blonde. And she was also in a bunch of other Carlos Tobalina films, and I think also she was introduced for the first time in a Carlos Tobalina film. So let's look at this one right here from 1983. This is a hardcore X-rated film by Carlos Tobalina, and this was restored in 2K from the 35mm camera negative. Oh my gosh, what other company would do that? This is awesome. Let's get into it, folks. My Sinful Life, 1983. This is a really wild film detailing a girl, her brother, and her parents, her adopted parents, and their sexual relationship with each other, mixing with the girl, the daughter, going off to her aunt's house to pursue school. And in the meantime, meeting a friend at her school who has a great job opportunity at a brothel and meets the headmistress. And along the way of her paid sexual adventures at this brothel with her friend, along the way, her brother looks for her and comes on in, and the mystery of who her real parents, her biological parents are, also gets revealed. There's also a 2-minute, if that, very bizarre sub-story involving pygmies, impregnating pygmies, because you're very tall. This is My Sinful Life, 1983, Carlos Tobalina. Are you ready? Here we go, folks. Well, let's look at the music first. The music in this film starts off pumping 80s pop, electronica, funk, straight with vocals. Vocals talking about doing you and sex and all that. And we also have another song near the end of the movie, near the very end of the movie, where we're getting this nice kind of cityscape shot from looks like a helicopter. We get some lyrics involving incest and fucking mothers and brothers and sisters. Yes, in the actual song. So the music here with the vocals is very Daz Band, if you're aware of that band from the 80s and stuff. But very kind of Commodores in the 80s, very funky, synthy, electronica, 80s, almost, getting vibes of just all the funk 80s dance music you got there. Now, for the vast majority of the film, there's wall-to-wall music in this movie, and wall-to-wall bizarre sound design as well, like where the sound just totally cuts out sometimes, and as Carlos Tobalina is known to do, is like kind of looping other pieces of audio from a previous section of a sex scene onto the current section of the sex scene. But the wall-to-wall music in this film is really kind of this groovy, funky 80s synth instrumental 80s synth music mixed with some 80s atmospheric synth that is almost slightly emotional, um, and um, and just atmosphere. So these are all the different types, and it really kind of loops throughout the film. In varying volumes and levels, and so it's wall-to-wall music here, folks. Really strong emphasis, I would say, on synths, electronics, and the 80s, even though it's in the early 80s, but 83 here. Now, when we look at the film and the style and the locations, Carlos Tobalina is always known to kind of start off with or throughout the film, kind of show architecture, the outside of a home, the outside of an apartment building, and then you enter in. And during sex scenes in My Sinful Life, we will have cuts in those sex scenes as he shows you the outside of the house a couple times. So it's very interesting. Now, in other ones of his films, he'll show the outside of, I believe, one of his homes. I don't know if these were any of his homes here in this film, but nonetheless, kind of getting those architectural shots that Carlos Tobalina is known for. Now, we have a flashback sequence at the beginning of the film, kind of going back and staying also at the same time in real time, and then we have these just wall-to-wall sex scenes in this film that are occupying all different levels depending on what you like, what your fetish is. But it could be either shocking and disturbing, or it would be something that would get you off on some hidden fetish that you might have. Now, we do have incestuous stuff in the movie, but we also have orgies at the brothel, lesbian scenes, close-up shots of penetration from behind, girl on top, from Danielle, close shots there. We even have a cameo from the infamous Jamie Gillis, who was in another Vinegar Syndrome title that I reviewed on this YouTube page, Corruption, directed by the director who did Last House on Dead End Street. Blanking on his name right now. So you have these sex scenes that are at the brothel, and then you have some incest flashback, but also incest that kind of makes its way into the brothel also in some interesting ways. Now, there is some interesting conversation in here that is bizarre. There is definitely almost comedic, bizarre stuff. Now, something that I've noticed in Carlos Tobalina's films, and I think this is the third one, all of a sudden somebody in the middle of a sex scene says, I have to go to the bathroom, I gotta pee. It happens again here in My Sinful Life. And Carlos also has a major twist at the end of this movie that is part shocking, disturbing, and also done in an extremely carefree way that Carlos Tobalina is known for at the conclusions of his films, almost in a way some sort of sexually philosophical statements that are very simple but very poignant for the conclusion of one of his films. You will see a couple people in this film that you've seen in other Carlos Tobalina films. So he kind of has like this family in there. We also have a much older woman in this film as well. So we're not only dealing with some of the incest taboos, we're also dealing with different ages, as she's the head mistress of the movie. And we also have a much older guy with a lot of white chest hair in the movie as well. Now, Danielle, who's on the cover of this movie, she's one of my favorites. I love her, love the movies that she's in, and she does a great job in here as well. If you know her at all, she has this very bizarre disposition about her with the way she speaks, her eyes. She has a great body, and really kind of carries the lead in this film. Now, we have you could get sucker punched in this movie because you wouldn't be aware that you possibly would be entering into some incestuous situations here. But it's in the way that the story goes, and the actual title, My Sinful Life, is in the movie. It's in the dialogue of the movie, but it's in the way that it is said and felt and meant that links to the conclusion of the film that is very, very interesting. Now, Carlos Tobalina also makes a cameo in this film as he is involved in kind of finding her biological parents, Danielle's biological parents. Now, so we have a film here that has a brothel, that has an incestuous past for this young girl, but also looking for her biological parents, utilizing a lawyer and money that she's making from the brothel. Now, if that were not enough, her aunt who she's staying with is also keeping it in the family incestuously as well. And so we have some pretty shocking themes going on in this film, mixed, done in a very light-hearted manner. That's what could make it so shocking, is that we have kind of disturbing sexual situations and fetishes being done in a very light-hearted way, especially in light of the lead character, Danielle, character's kind of philosophy on her whole life, and the way that she views her past, her flashbacks, the way she was raised by her adopted parents, and how she carries that into her present day and her future, even as she meets her biological parents. So this is 1983's My Sinful Life. And, Carlos Tobalina has some... not for all the sequences, but for a couple, he has slow motion ejaculation, but he also has slow motion in another sequence. And I also believe he has some sped up motion in a couple sequences as well, as things started to look like the sex scene was starting to look kind of little wildly fast in a way. But we have wall-to-wall sex scenes in this film, and I believe they were done really well. Sometimes you can look carefully and it looks like something was simulated in the background, where people are just kind of laying on top of each other. So that's really interesting. One of the hottest, I believe, sex scenes in the film was with Jamie Gillis and Danielle and her friend that she met in school. But lots of wild stuff in this film. Here it is, folks. 1983 is My Sinful Life by Carlos Tobalina. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like 1983's My Sinful Life. Thank you so much, and please feel free to check out all my other reviews in this YouTube page, as well as my own personal films, by Googling Apartment 1014 Films. Thank you so much, and good night.